The forest was quiet, except for the low hum of an excavator somewhere beyond the trees. Morning mist clung to the moss and roots, turning the air thick and metallic. A crew was clearing ground for an access road. Routine work, except the operator's bucket suddenly hit something that wasn't rock. The impact rang sharp and hollow, like striking the hull of a ship. The machine stopped instantly. The sound reverberated under the soil for a moment, and then faded, leaving the forest in uneasy silence. The workers gathered around. One man knelt and brushed away the dirt with his gloves, uncovering a flat sheet of metal, smooth, cold, and far too even to be debris. As they cleared more, the outline took shape. A rectangular structure, 2 meters across, embedded perfectly into the earth. At its center, a pair of sliding elevator doors, the kind you'd see in a modern office tower. Steel panels, slightly warped by moisture, streaked with rust and moss. At first they thought it must be some kind of art installation, but as they looked closer, the realism was too precise. The seam where the doors met, the brushed finish of the metal, the small LED floor display above the frame, cracked but visible. It looked real, not decorative. Someone suggested it might be from a decommissioned facility buried decades ago. Another pointed out the style was wrong, too new, too clean in design. It looked like it had been built recently, but no project of that kind existed within 50 kilometers. They cleared the rest of the soil from the sides. The elevator wasn't attached to any building. No structure, no stairwell, no visible shaft housing. Just the doors, seat flush into the forest floor, surrounded by roots and ferns. A small control panel stood beside the frame, stainless steel, covered in grime. One of the workers wiped it with his sleeve. Underneath, the call button lit faintly red, as if still powered. They all froze. Could be the excavator's generator leaking current, someone said. But the generator wasn't even running. They had cut the engine minutes before. The light flickered again, steady this time, and from beneath the ground came a low electrical hum. Not loud, but deep enough to feel through the soles of their boots. The site supervisor ordered everyone back. They measured radiation. Nothing unusual. Still, the air felt charged, as though the thing beneath the soil was awake. He took out his phone, recording video as one of the men pressed the button. For a few seconds, nothing. Then the digital indicator above the door flashed weakly. 10V. The number glowed a dull red before fading again. The sound that followed was unmistakable. The faint mechanical whine of elevator brakes releasing, buried somewhere deep below. A gust of cold air escaped from between the doors, smelling faintly of iron and dust. The forest was still. Even the birds had stopped. They fenced off the area, took coordinates, and radioed the regional office. The supervisor planned to leave a night guard until engineers arrived. But as they packed up, someone noticed the doors had shifted slightly open. Just a few centimeters, enough to reveal blackness inside. The men argued whether the vibration from their machinery had caused it, but none of them could explain the echo that came from within when one of them dropped a small rock through the gap. It fell for several seconds, then struck metal far below. Before leaving, the supervisor took one last photo. The elevator standing silent amid the trees, its mirrored surface reflecting the pale sky, the red number 10 still faintly glowing above the doors. If you like real investigations into strange, forgotten places, subscribe and comment which city you're from. Maybe a forest near you hides something just as inexplicable. By dusk, the workers had left. The forest returned to its quiet rhythm. Wind in the branches, faint hum of insects. The site stood empty, except for the elevator, gleaming faintly through a layer of fog. Its light flickered one last time before the screen went dark. By the next morning, the discovery had reached the Regional Construction Bureau. 2 engineers and a technician were dispatched to assess the find. The crew from the previous day had already cordoned off the area with warning tape. Dew still covered the metal surface, and the air carried that same faint hum, too soft to identify, but steady, like an electric current vibrating through the ground. The engineers examined the structure up close. The elevator doors were fully modern. Stainless steel, precision joints, digital display built into the frame. But there was no sign of external wiring. They dug carefully around the edges, expecting to find a power conduit or a maintenance shaft. Instead, the elevator body continued downward in a seamless metal shell, vanishing straight into the soil. No bolts, no joints, no signs of assembly. One engineer knelt beside the panel and removed its cover plate. Inside, the circuitry looked brand new. Printed boards, capacitors, and LED strips, all of it untouched by corrosion, despite months or years exposed to the weather. He tested the interface with a multimeter, frowning when the needle jumped. There was live current. "No way this thing should have power," he murmured. The technician checked for nearby transmission lines. Nothing within several kilometers. They powered up a portable camera rig and attached it to a cable reel. If the elevator shaft was hollow, the camera would tell them how deep it went. The team opened the doors using a manual override. Surprisingly smooth. No rust binding the track. Behind them, a polished metal interior reflected their flashlights. It wasn't dirty or decayed. It looked as if someone had cleaned it recently. They lowered the camera down. For the first 15 meters, only polished steel walls appeared, dotted with ventilation vents. At 20 meters, the lens caught a faint blue glow, perhaps emergency lights. The shaft continued beyond the reach of the cable, perfectly vertical. The video feed showed no signs of debris, no insects, no moisture. The air below was completely still. Back at the surface, the technicians argued whether the elevator was even a real structure or a simulation chamber, something experimental. One theory suggested it might be part of a test facility built by a private company and later abandoned. But that didn't explain the steady power or the modern design in a place with no road access. The engineers decided to shut down for the evening and return with a portable generator to compare voltage readings. Before leaving, they tried pressing the button again. The same faint red light blinked. Then the indicator above the door displayed V1. A quiet mechanical click followed, a sound so subtle that everyone heard it only because the forest around had gone silent. Nothing moved. The doors remained open, the interior dark. But the light stayed on this time, steady and calm. The engineers photographed every detail: the clean edges of the doorway, the mirrored ceiling, the untouched floor panels. None of it looked abandoned. It looked paused. They covered the site and left a motion camera on a tripod nearby. The recording from that night would later show only one moment of change. Around 2:14 a.m., the digital indicator above the elevator doors flickered once, changing briefly from V1 to G. Then it went dark again. 2 days later, a full survey team arrived at the site. The forest clearing had been expanded to fit a temporary tent, generator, and safety equipment. By now, the elevator was more than an anomaly. It had become a classified engineering inspection. The regional office wanted to know who had built it, how it was powered, and where it led. The engineers brought a winch system, sensors, and a high-resolution inspection camera. The door was pried open completely and secured with steel brackets. The inside looked untouched. Metal handrails, brushed steel walls, and a small floor display that still faintly glowed. Someone had wiped a finger across the dust on the panel. It left almost no mark. The air smelled faintly synthetic, like the inside of a sealed laboratory. When the generator was turned on, their instruments registered nothing unusual. No magnetic field, no heat, no radio signal. Yet the call button on the panel continued to respond, glowing with that same low red light. One technician connected a voltage meter directly to the housing. The readings fluctuated between 48 and 52 volts, steady, like an autonomous circuit feeding itself. They decided to send the camera again, this time with stronger lights. The footage revealed smooth, vertical walls stretching down more than 40 meters. At the bottom, a closed set of identical elevator doors, perfectly preserved. Along the shaft, faint blue guide lights blinked every 5 meters, like an emergency system still functioning. The feed continued to transmit flawlessly. Then, without anyone touching the controls, the elevator's interior lights flicked on. Soft white LEDs illuminated the cabin from within, humming quietly. The generator wasn't connected to the structure. The team froze. Someone muttered that maybe the power came from an underground line or battery bank, but no one could find any evidence of either. The decision was made. One engineer and a safety officer would enter the cabin with monitoring gear. They stepped inside carefully, the floor firm beneath their boots. Everything felt sterile. No rust, no smell of decay. The elevator's control panel was sleek, minimal. 2 buttons, G and B. The G button glowed faintly. The safety officer pressed B. The sound that followed was almost gentle. The whirring of modern servo motors, distant at first, then precise. The floor trembled slightly, and with a mechanical sigh, the elevator began to descend. The others outside stepped back instinctively. The cabin lowered smoothly into the ground, the lights fading as the doors rose level with the soil. For a full minute, the indicator beside the door displayed B1. The hum continued, steady and deep. Then the display went blank. Radio contact held for about 40 seconds. The engineer's voice came through, calm but disbelieving. "The floor is opening. There's a corridor here. Modern design, LED panels, still active." Then static. The team at the surface tried to raise them again. No response. The elevator stopped moving, but the shaft lights below still glowed faintly blue. They waited, listening to the faint wind in the trees. The only sound was the quiet buzz of electricity coming from the structure, alive but silent, as if waiting for the next command. For the first 10 minutes after the elevator disappeared, the team at the surface said nothing. The radio hissed with low static, the kind that comes when a signal is strong, but the transmitter goes silent. They tried multiple channels, no response. The safety officer's tracking beacon still transmitted, blinking on the monitor as a faint pulse roughly 40 meters below ground. The elevator had stopped at that depth, the same as the shaft's base seen on the camera earlier. They debated whether to recall the cabin, but the controls were dead. The call button no longer responded. Even the red indicator had gone out. The only sign of activity came from the faint vibration underfoot, steady and rhythmic, like a motor idling far below. After 40 minutes, protocol forced them to act. 2 more engineers prepared to descend, using harnesses and a secondary cable system. They lowered a new inspection camera ahead of them, the same smooth walls as before, faint blue lights glowing every few meters. When the camera reached the bottom, it caught the reflection of the open elevator doors. Beyond them was a corridor stretching horizontally, its floor lined with metal tiles and strips of white light embedded beneath transparent panels. The first engineer stepped into the cabin. It smelled too clean for a place supposedly abandoned. The elevator's digital display on the wall was frozen on B1. A second later, the feed from the camera confirmed movement, both men crossing into the corridor. The walls were pale silver, the lighting diffuse and constant. At 30 meters, the signal began to degrade, but the last transmitted images showed what looked like a junction, a wider chamber with glass partitions, empty chairs, and cables trailing across the floor. Then, the video cut to black. At the surface, panic mixed with disbelief. The shaft was quiet. No voices echoed upward. They tried sending a recall command through a diagnostic line. No effect. It was as if the elevator system recognized the command, but refused to obey. The hum below grew louder for a moment, then stopped completely. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The mist had thickened, curling around the edges of the steel doors. Hours passed. No motion, no sound. Then, at 1847, the digital indicator above the shaft lit up again, G. The elevator began to rise. When it reached the surface, the lights inside were off. The cabin was empty. No blood, no damage, no footprints. Just silence and a faint odor of ozone, like the air after an electrical storm. On the floor lay a small recording device, the one the engineer had worn on his chest harness. The playback lasted only 12 seconds. In the dim glow of the corridor lights, one of the men's voices whispered, "It's not empty. It's running." Then a click. The feed ended there. They sealed the shaft for the night and left a security team on site. The forest grew darker, and by the time the last truck left the clearing, fog had swallowed the elevator again. The faint red glow of the display was the only sign that anything beneath the surface was still alive. The next morning, the investigation escalated. A government engineering division arrived, sealed the forest road, and took control of the site. The elevator was now classified as active mechanical infrastructure of unknown origin. The original construction crew was dismissed. The new team, equipped with data instruments, radiation meters, and audio scanners, began by retrieving everything the first group had left behind. The most important object was the recording device found on the elevator floor. Specialists copied its data onto an isolated terminal. The file was only 12 seconds long, but the waveform showed faint background frequencies extending far beyond human hearing. When they filtered the signal, a low mechanical pattern emerged, rhythmic, deliberate, too structured to be random. The engineers compared it to machinery noise, but the amplitude was constant, as if the sound source never moved. It was not static, it was running. Next, they tested the elevator's power source. Every meter of cable they traced led nowhere. Under the forest soil, no power conduits existed. And yet, voltage readings inside the frame showed stable current, 51.8 volts DC. One theory suggested that the system drew inductive energy from an underground source, though no trace of wiring or EM resonance could be detected. The elevator was functioning autonomously. At noon, they reactivated the external camera feed to the shaft. The interior looked unchanged. The polished floor, the mirror panels, the faint glow from the control interface. Nothing unusual. But when one technician reviewed footage from the previous night, he noticed something small but impossible to explain. Between 2:13 and 2:15 a.m., the cabin's display had shown a new character for 2 seconds. Bito. The elevator had gone deeper than its original limit. The command panel at the surface had no such level programmed. The engineers ran diagnostic pings through the shaft, expecting the signal to stop at 40 meters. Instead, the echo returned from 60. Somewhere beneath the known depth, a secondary chamber existed, one no one had seen. After sunset, they lowered a sensor pod to confirm the readings. At 40 meters, everything matched previous measurements. Past 50, the pod's pressure gauge shifted. The air was colder, denser, cleaner. At 58 meters, the signal cut out entirely, as if the cable had been sliced clean. When they pulled it back, the lower casing of the pod was scorched. The metal warped like it had brushed against an active heat source. The site director ordered all descent operations suspended. He contacted the Ministry of Energy to check for any records of subterranean infrastructure in that grid section. The response came hours later. Nothing. No tunnels, no cables, no data. The land beneath was solid granite. Before midnight, the elevator doors closed by themselves for the first time since the discovery. No one had touched them. The red indicator flickered to life once more. VB2. Then the hum began again, steady and deep, as the entire cabin sank slowly into the earth. They watched, powerless, as the lights disappeared below the surface. When the display finally went dark, the forest returned to silence. But the seismic sensors recorded a faint vibration lasting over 7 minutes, resonating far beneath the granite bedrock, as if something massive had come online. By the following morning, the clearing had turned into a controlled site. Heavy equipment, sealed tents, and mobile servers surrounded the elevator, now hidden under tarps. The hum beneath the ground persisted, detectable on seismic instruments, but inaudible to the ear. The ministry had taken over, assigning a multidisciplinary team of engineers, data specialists, and power grid analysts. Their objective was to locate the source of the current. Readings showed the elevator drawing a stable 40 kilowatts of energy from below, independent of any surface line. The nearest substation was 15 kilometers away and entirely disconnected. When they shut off every external generator on site, the red standby light on the elevator door stayed on, bright and unwavering. At noon, they fed a signal tracer into the panel. Instead of wiring, the interior was built around a closed aluminum casing filled with composite modules, unlike any registered design. The components pulsed faintly, as if regulating power through an internal cycle. No one could determine whether it was a reactor or a capacitor array, but its efficiency was extraordinary. The surface temperature never rose more than 1 degree. One of the analysts proposed that the elevator might belong to an unfinished deep storage network, private or experimental, created by an energy company years ago. But the deeper they searched through building registries, the clearer it became. No construction permits, no blueprints, no record of excavation in this sector, not even soil disturbance in satellite archives. The elevator had appeared where nothing was supposed to exist. At dusk, the hum changed. The frequency monitors picked up a pattern: 3 pulses, then silence, 3 more, then silence. When they translated the spacing, the rhythm matched an internal diagnostic sequence, the kind elevators perform after maintenance or system reboot. Without warning, the door slid open again. Inside, the cabin lights glowed steady white. The floor display read B2. A mild current of cool air rose from below, dry and filtered. Instruments registered perfect oxygen balance, as if the system beneath still maintained environmental control. The director decided to send an autonomous probe. It descended past the known level at 40 meters, continuing downward along new segments of shaft never recorded before. The feed showed immaculate metal walls, evenly spaced LEDs, and at 60 meters, a secondary level, a platform identical to the one above but broader, with another set of doors at the far end, marked Maintenance Access. When the probe advanced, the signal began to distort, lines of interference running through the video until it froze completely. Then, a faint audio tone replaced the feed, a single continuous note, followed by a click, like a relay engaging. Every monitor at the surface went dark at the same time. The only thing still powered was the elevator's control panel, displaying one brief message before fading away. System reconnecting. Estimated time: 48. For 2 full days, the structure remained silent, sealed, and pulsing faintly with its own internal rhythm. The forest around it stayed unchanged, but everyone who stood near the clearing could feel it. A vibration underfoot, regular, deep, as though the earth itself had begun to breathe. 48 hours later, at dawn, the display on the elevator doors blinked awake. The countdown had reached 0. For several minutes, nothing else happened. The forest was still, wrapped in a thin mist, until a single chime echoed from below, a clean electronic tone that sounded almost new. The indicator changed from dark red to soft white. B3, online. The director gave the order to monitor, but not intervene. Every instrument registered a sudden rise in voltage. The power output tripled for 6 minutes, then stabilized at 120 kilowatts, enough to operate a small facility. Thermal sensors detected activity 65 meters beneath the surface, expanding outward in a circular pattern nearly 100 meters wide. At 07:14, the elevator doors opened on their own. The cabin lights were on, and faint air drifted upward, dry and cool. The floor display now showed B3 steady. The same 2 buttons, G and B, were still lit. The engineers debated whether to send another probe. The director decided against it. Instead, they dropped a fiber optic camera down the shaft. The feed revealed a level unlike the others. The lower platform was surrounded by corridors branching in multiple directions, all constructed from the same polished alloy. Along one wall stood a series of glass-paneled cubicles, empty, but perfectly maintained. Lights flickered on automatically as the camera rotated. In the center of the main corridor stood a large rectangular console, humming softly, its surface covered with a thin layer of dust. Above it, a label in English and Russian. Autonomous Infrastructure Network, Sector Node. The implication was immediate. This wasn't a random experiment or art installation. It was infrastructure, part of a system buried beneath the country, decades after the old civil defense bunkers were decommissioned. The elevator was a service access point, one of many. Each node could function independently, powered by deeper thermoelectric arrays, connected wirelessly through ground transmission to neighboring units. The purpose? To maintain minimal communications and environmental control in case of total surface failure. Somewhere in the bureaucratic handoff between collapsing institutions and privatized defense contracts, the project had been abandoned, but not disabled. The system had remained alive, feeding itself on residual power, waiting for a signal that never came, until excavation disturbed its sensors. By late afternoon, the energy readings began to fall. The display on the elevator doors flickered once, then dimmed. The final image transmitted from the probe showed the console screen activating briefly. Across it appeared a line of text: Node 02, maintenance cycle complete. Connection status, standby. Then everything went dark again. The elevator doors closed slowly, sealing with a faint hiss. The red standby light returned, steady and calm. The engineers stood in silence, aware that somewhere below them, the system still breathed, patient, automated, unacknowledged. As the team packed up and the trucks left the clearing, evening settled over the forest. The hatch reflected the fading light through a thin film of moisture. To anyone passing by, it would look like nothing more than a strange industrial relic. But deep underground, beneath meters of granite and soil, a network older and more enduring than any company or ministry remained quietly awake, still connected, still waiting.